This episode of Dolphins Today is presented by Manscaped. Smooth Sack Summer is here. We'll tell you all about it and Manscaped's top-of-the-line men's grooming products. When you use promo code Dolphins at manscaped.com, you'll get 20% off and free shipping. We've got some cut candidates on today's show, some notable names. We're not going to talk about the guys that you've never heard of, the eighth-string receiver. We begin with a very big name, the most expensive player on this list. That is wide receiver Cedrick Wilson, who, of course, had signed over last offseason from the Dallas Cowboys. He didn't play much last year. Dolphins got this guy named Tyreek Hill. Turns out they did not need him as much. The money, we'll break down the money on each of these guys. Wilson carries an $8 million cap hit. If the Dolphins cut him now or in August or in September, whenever before week 1, they would only save $2 million. That is all they would save. And at that point, maybe you wonder if he's worth keeping as a backup receiver / return man. Wilson didn't do much on offense last year. Was a bit banged up. Maybe that put him behind a little bit for whatever reason. Guys like Trent Sherfield outsnapped Cedrick Wilson. 136 receiving yards. In his career, his second worst output beyond his rookie year when he only played 6 games. He was more productive in 2020 and vastly more so in 2021. And the Dolphins have depth pieces at wide receiver. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. We could have put Braxton Berrios on this list if we really wanted to. Robbie Chosen, who we'll get to. Eric Ezukama, the recent draft pick. River Craycraft. That's 7 receivers. Barring injuries, they're not going to keep all 7 guys on that roster. So what would you do with Cedrick Wilson? T for trade, which seems unlikely given the base salary guarantee this year. C for cut, or K for keep. Those, of course, are the only 3 options with Cedrick Wilson. So what would you do? Go vote for me in the comments. Robbie Chosen, next up. And again, it's Chosen on the back of his jersey. He was Robbie Anderson with a Y. Then he was Robbie Anderson with an IE. Then he was Chosen Anderson. Then he announced it was Anderson R. Chosen, Anderson R. Chosen, which apparently is Chosen last name Robbie Anderson. I think that's his full name now. I don't really know, but jersey says Chosen, so we're going to roll with that. $1.09 million cap hit, pretty cheap, but the vast majority of that is not guaranteed. The Dolphins would save $940K if they cut Chosen, which is basically a non-guaranteed deal. That's because he was bad last year. That is why Chosen had such little interest in him in the open market and why the Dolphins got him so cheap. He wasn't productive last season. He played for both the Panthers, bad quarterback play, I know, and the Arizona Cardinals, which had some quarterback injuries, but he wasn't being used at all either. The 1,000-yard receiver, I don't know if we're going to see that guy again. We've seen players go from, good receivers to non-existent really quickly before. A bit worried Chosen falls in that same category. We're going to get some more names here, but name a player who you want to cut. What player do you want to move on from? Sound off at the pinned comment of today's show. So if the ad comes here on YouTube, ignore it. Head down there and go vote. Alec Ingold is on this list, and I know the Mike McDaniel offense uses a fullback historically, back to the Kyle Juszczyk days in San Francisco. And I'll mention it's candidates, not guaranteed cuts or even players that you have to cut. But there is some savings here. Ingold's due $3.75 million here. Not that much, but also among the higher numbers for a fullback. Miami would save $3 million if they choose to cut the former Raiders fullback. I like Ingold, though. He can help you on special teams, although he was only 17th in snaps. And he does offer some pass-catching value, but he's not a premier playmaker. And maybe the hybrid solution for a player that he does a good job of blocking, but isn't drastically going to impact your stat sheet. Maybe the solution here is to keep him on the roster at a discounted rate. That could be a pay cut. That could be when you're playing around with your roster numbers or whatever, you say, Alec, we're actually going to cut you, and we're going to bring you back on a 1-year deal, and we're only going to give you $1.5 million. We're going to cut that salary closer to half in the end. Just an idea there. Do you guys want to keep Ingold as the fullback? Or maybe you believe in John Lovett even. Y for yes, N for no. Go vote where else but the comment section. Noah Igbinoghene is next up, who I liked him coming out of Auburn. The Dolphins did as well. He was a first-round pick, and he hasn't been able to play that much football, and he's been a big disappointment for Miami. The issue here, he's due $3.58 million. The Dolphins would save just over $500,000 if they cut him. And remember, if you're cutting a player, you have to sign somebody else to fill that roster spot, and they're going to make more than $500,000. They're going to make more like $800K, somewhere in that range. So all of a sudden, you're in a situation where you're not actually saving money if you cut Noah Igbinoghene. But if he's bad again, and the team just does not trust him, even with Vic Fangio out there as the defensive coordinator, maybe it does make some sense to say, let's just cut our losses and move on. He played in 9 games last year. The numbers don't look that bad. He wasn't playing very much, which is the sign of a player the coaching staff simply did not trust. And the Dolphins, they move on from Byron Jones, the most obvious cut candidate ever. They drafted Cam Smith in the 2nd round this year. They traded for Jalen Ramsey. Kader Kohou and Nick Needham are, I think, good nickel options. There's 5 corners. We'll get to Keion Crossen. Justin Bethel is a core special teamer for this team. I know there are some Trill Williams fans out there. The math might not work out that much for Noah Igbinoghene. Now we're talking about cuts today. If you don't want to cut, you should be using Manscaped. Don't be using the same razor you use to shave your face that you use to shave your balls. That is gross, and it's not designed to shave the same items. So use Manscaped's top-of-the-line men's grooming products. They're going to give you 20% off and free shipping when you use promo code DOLPHINS at manscaped.com. We'll put that link in the comment section and the description of today's show. Don't just get the Lawnmower 4.0. Get the Performance Package 4.0. That comes with the lawnmower, the below-the-waist grooming product, the Weed Whacker, which trims up your nose hairs, your ear hair if you need it, ball toner, ball conditioner, because let's be honest, if you wear deodorant, shouldn't you be using ball deodorant too? Kind of makes sense since those get pretty smelly and stinky too sometimes. The boxers, by the way, the best, most comfortable boxers I've ever known. I feel like I'm just sitting on a nice little comfy cloud all day at work or at golf or whatever. Get Manscaped's products. You will not regret them. They are awesome. 20% off and free shipping when you use promo code DOLPHINS. That's right. We got the promo code for the Dolphins at manscaped.com. Links in the comments and the description of today's show. Smooth sack summer. Get on board or get left behind. Keion Crossen is next up here, the Dolphins corner, or the other Dolphins corner, I should say. Crossen is a special teamer more so than Ingold or Igbinoghene. 229 snaps on special teams last year. That was 7th most on the team. But money's a factor here. We mentioned how Noah Igbinoghene is a $3.58 million cap hit. Crossen, 3.16, so a little bit less. But his deal is not guaranteed. So you could cut him and save all of that. And that's a lot of money to play for a good, but maybe not premier special teams player or top-end number 1 special teams player. So Crossen, I do think, could be a prime cut candidate just because of the money. He could even be a cut and bring back option as well. Didn't play a ton on defense last year. Didn't love his results when he was out there. Under 56% completion rate's pretty solid. Numbers a little bit worse than Igbinoghene, but a little bit more playing time, so it kind of evened out. But I think he's more of a special teamer than he is a trustworthy defensive piece. Salvon Ahmed, next up here, one of the 2 backs we'll talk about in the final 3 cut candidates on today's show. A little bit more money savings than the other back we'll get to, but a different percentage. Ahmed has a $1.41 million cap hit this year. The cap savings there would be 1.10, so $1.10 million. It's a pretty good chunk of change you'd be able to save in the event you choose to move on from him. Ahmed didn't play much last year. 12 carries, 64 yards. Did get 5.3 yards per carry with the 1 touchdown. But he wasn't really a core part of that ground game, and that's okay. He's carved out a decent role, for what he was as an undrafted free agent. He had 149 carries in 2021, 319 in 2020. That number's been going the wrong direction. The presence of Devon Achane, not to mention the long-standing rumors about Dalvin Cook with Raheem Mostert and with Jeff Wilson. The numbers don't quite a line, especially with Myles Gaskin, who we'll get to. You're probably going to carry 4 maximum. If Dalvin Cook comes, there ain't room for Ahmed barring injuries. And if Dalvin Cook does come to Miami, you know we're going to do a video on it. We got you guys covered. We'll break it down. We'll have some fun. We'll celebrate. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/Dolphins News for more free Dolphins videos. Another running back. This one makes sense, right? Myles Gaskin, who falls in the same category as Ahmed of just that the numbers might not be there. Cheaper contract, just under $1 million this year for Gaskin, but the contract is fully guaranteed. That's just, or excuse me, is no guarantee. The exact opposite of what I just said. There's no guaranteed money for Gaskin, so you could cut him and not have to pay him a cent on your salary cap. And for a player that just did not play really at all last year, 10 carries, 26 yards, you can probably cut him. I mean, you might give him to your practice squad if you really wanted to. The issue for Gaskin, he's been a sub 4-yard per carry player. And I've gotten in fights with other members of social media about the numbers and all that stuff of under 4 yards per carry. And like, 4 yards is good. It's actually not. There were only a couple of teams that averaged under 4 yards per carry across the NFL. If you're under that number, it's just not good enough. So you're going to have to cut, barring injuries or other moves, one of those 2 backs, Salvon Ahmed or Myles Gaskin. Who would you cut first? I have to cut both of them when it's all said and done. SA for Salvon Ahmed, MG for Myles Gaskin. Wrap up with one more offensive player. I'll be honest, I did not realize I picked 8 of them, or 6 offensive players. But hey, that's probably just a more indication of the money and stuff going on around those positions there. Cedric Ogbuehi, the former early-round pick from the Cincinnati Bengals, $1.35 million cap hit this year. Almost none of that is guaranteed. Yeah, $50K is all he got guaranteed. $1.3 million in savings if the Dolphins were to cut him. And there is going to be more competition in a good way along that offensive line, right? Teron Armstead, Liam Eichenberg, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt, Austin Jackson are your quote-unquote starters. Isaiah Wynn, Dan Feeney, Jerron Christian, Ryan Haynes, Robert Jones, even Lester Cotton and Kendall Lamb. These guys are all fighting for spots. You're not going to probably carry 10. You might carry 9. Maybe you get 10 if you're lucky. That might not leave room for Ogbuehi. And the reason why I picked him over other offensive linemen, look at the guaranteed money on their respective contracts. Dan Feeney, $3.13 million guaranteed. Isaiah Wynn, $1.96 million guaranteed. Ogbuehi, $50,000. That is a stark difference, and it is an indication of who the Dolphins think is the bigger priority to make the team. Ogbuehi's been a backup for years now, bouncing around the NFL, Seattle, the Jets, etc. He played under 300 snaps, and he just wasn't very good. Ogbuehi, to put it in perspective, I would rather start Austin Jackson, and it's not even a consideration for me. I know how many of you guys feel about Austin Jackson. I simply don't see the value in having Ogbuehi play real snaps. If he wins the 8th or 9th offensive line role, cool. That's fine. That doesn't matter to me all that much. But if he's playing real snaps for you, as the numbers bear out on screen, oof, that is a very, very dangerous red flag for the Miami Dolphins. So I'm not going to get my hopes up for Ogbuehi, but of those 3 offensive linemen, I do think he makes the most sense to move on from.